Hi everybody, this is Laurie Mangold and this is the second advanced block of our $5 quilt series. It's another 24-inch block. You can see I've got it laid out on the design wall. It's not quite all sewn together, so I can show you the piece parts in the assembly video. The first video we're going to do is to cut it, but it is a fun block. I think you'll enjoy it. It's not got quite as many pieces as the first one, but it does have some interesting match points that you'll have to do. So we're going to start. I'm going to show you the instructions if you want to look. This is page 1, which is the cutting instructions. And then we have a page 2, which is an assembly of the piece parts. And then page 3 is the assembly of the whole block as you go and work your way out. So, and it's all color coded to your color, whichever one you are doing. So we're going to quickly, it's not so quickly, but quickly show you how to cut this one and the way that it goes. And then we will do a quick video on the assembly. So I'm going to have her move the camera down to my cutting space. So this is piece 1 in the Desert Sage. It is 27 inches long by 10 inches tall before you pre-shrink. It's probably a little less since I've pre-shrunk it. Now notice that this is too short. So this is one of those, yes, I could fold it and try to cut strips, but then they might not be straight. I'm going to actually do the cross cutting first and then cut it down into size, and then I don't have to worry about how big my ruler is. So I'm going to slide, well, first I got to clean cut an edge. We always have to start with that clean cut edge. So I'm going to do this, okay? Now, if I look at the instructions, I need 2 8.5-inch pieces, and I need 2 4.5-inch pieces. So the good news is my ruler is 8.5 inches wide, so I am just going to line that up right on the edge, make sure it is straight, that to the edge, and I'm just going to cut one of those, and then I'm going to do a second one. And we're not lining anything else up but the one edge, so that our 2 edges here are going to be nice and straight. And then we're going to turn it on the side and cut our pieces. Now we need 2 4.5-inch strips. And again, I'm only using the one straight edge. So I've got 4.5 is straight, and then I'm going to do 4.5 over here. And make sure it's straight. Okay. And that's my extra. Now, the 2 4.5s, I'm going to turn on their side, and I'm going to put on top of each other, and I'm going to clean cut one edge. Make sure it's straight. Remember, you can line both these up now because it should be 4.5. And now I can just flip this over, and I'm going to do 4.5-inch here. And now I'm lining this line, and this line up, making sure they're straight. I'm going to do one set, and then I'm going to do another set.
Those are 4.5-inch squares.
4.5-inch squares. So I have 4 4.5-inch squares. Then I'm going to take these 2, and I'm going to cut these into, we've done the 8.5, so they need to be 4.5 by 8.5. So I'm going to line those up. I'm going to clean cut this edge, and again I'm going to cut 2 4.5 strips out of here. So notice that I didn't have to start with the big long. I went ahead and cut my segments first, and now I can cut them down and keep them manageable. And with this block you're going to find that you've got a lot of big pieces, so that's what you're going to have to do. So there's 2 4.5 by 8.5s. There's 4 actually, 4 4.5 by 8.5, and 4 4.5-inch squares. And this color is what we just cut, is where the opal is in the Tula block. Okay. All right. So now we're going to cut the next color, which is behind me. And this one's even longer, okay? You can see. So this one is 35 inches long, and it is 10 inches tall. And we need to cut 8 4.5 by 8.5. So we're gonna get 2 across, and so we need 4 8.5-inch pieces off of here. And I am gonna go ahead and clean cut one side, because it'll make it easier when I line it up. And I'm gonna flip it over. And it's all been pre-shrunk, that's why it looks uneven. And now, because my ruler is 8.5, if my ruler wasn't 8.5, you could always use the lines on your mat. But since my ruler's a perfect 8.5, I'm gonna make sure it's nice and straight, and I'm gonna get 1. Good. 2. This is where you start getting nervous and say, I hope there's enough fabric. 3. And now we can get 1 more. I love this fabric. It's just so fun with that pattern in there. There's 4. Okay. Now you could get really brave and stack all 4. I'm not that brave. So I do 2 at a time, and I've got them lined up. And I am going to clean cut one edge, making sure I'm lined up top and bottom. Get both, yep. And then I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm gonna try not to move them, 4.5 inches. So I'm gonna need 8 4.5 by 8.5. So there's 2, and there is 4. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing with these. This is one sometimes, you know, the rotating mats, they have small of them. Sometimes I wish I had a giant rotating mat where I didn't have to move the fabric. I could just rotate the mat around. So 4.5, that way you wouldn't have to disturb them. And another 4.5. This is not too bad to cut. I think as long as you're doing the segments first. I'm gonna need a trash can. I always like to keep a trash can at the end of my station, so that otherwise they end up everywhere when I'm cutting. So I have one right at the end of my cutting table, so I can just do this. Now this one is interesting, and this is, we have to cut out of here, we have to cut 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have to cut, well, it's set up to cut 40 2.5-inch squares. We only need 36, but it was easier to do the fabric to give you, just to keep cutting. So the first thing I am going to do, my ruler is long enough for this, is I am going to clean cut, and I'm going to cut this into 2.5-inch strips. And then I'm going to show you a little tool that I like to use when I'm cutting that many pieces. Okay. So I'm looking for my 2.5, and again, we want to make sure it's nice and straight on the edge. These are going to be all the corners that you see behind me that are in the dark purple. And we're going to be using the stitch and flip method. And so you can see how many times you're going to have to do that. And so you may want to check out the video we posted on the folded corner ruler, because it's a huge time saver, and it was a game changer for me doing all these corners. I was able to do them very quickly and very accurately using that ruler. So, okay, so drop that in. So now I have all these strips, and I have to cut them into 2.5-inch strips. So I am going to, I like to stack them. I usually 2's my limit, depends on how brave I'm feeling, I might do 3. And I will line them up on a line on my mat so that I know they're straight. And then I'm going to just go up 1, keep a 1/2 inch between them. I'm gonna show you a trick. I'm gonna do this one. I could put this one on top, but I think my ruler's big enough. I'm gonna use what's called the Stripology Ruler that has all these wonderful little slits in it. And I'm gonna put it down and I'm going to find a straight line. Where's my first? There it is. And I'm gonna line this all the way across on the strip. And then I'm gonna check that all 3 of them, and believe it or not, I've kept them straight. Now what's cool about this ruler is it has slits. So I'm gonna put my ruler in and I'm gonna do the 0 slit. There are marks down here. So these stars are every 1.5 inches. The squares are every 2.5 inches. So if you don't like to do the math and count your way over, you can go, so 2.5 is right here, the first square. I don't even have to do the math. I can just put my ruler in each square, each slit that has a square. So we're at 10. So 12.5, you can't see it. This one dropped and broke, so we have it taped together. But I have 15. And
We're
then
hard on our tools.
Yes, we are. 17.5, and then 20. Okay, so I was able to do that. Now watch this magic. Rather than having to move my ruler all that time, there are all my 2.5 inch squares. Now, I'll be honest with you, this ruler is a specialty ruler and it's not inexpensive. And you want to just pop up for a minute? It's not inexpensive. And for the rest of the blocks that we have coming, there's not going to be one where we have to power cut quite that many. But when I was cutting those 4.5 inch pieces, at home I would have grabbed this and lined them up and just cut them with this because they're consistent. But it is a fun ruler to have, especially when you need to cut lots of pieces in specific increments. Every slit is a 1/2 inch apart, and so you can just work your way on down. They've got it so that it's 20 inches long now, so pretty much a 1/2 of a length of fabric is usually 20 to 22, so you can usually get a full 1/2 a length of fabric on here. But I just wanted to show you how quick and easy that was with the right tool. All right, and then last but not least is our background fabric. This month in the Desert Sage, look how fun this is. This is my favorite one, I think, with the dandelion print on it. It's just so pretty. So we are going to clean cut an edge. We need an 8.5 inch square, which is going to be our square here, and then 2 4.5 inch squares for the corner, or a total of 4. So if I again flip this over, I can put this on the edge here. Is that right? Yes. It doesn't look right. Okay, so in the process of cutting, I realized that we had an error in our fabric. So for those of you in San Antonio, I'm going to show you how we are fixing it. And by the time we cut the kits for Katie, you're going to be A-okay. So the instructions here say that it should be 10 inches by 18.5. The pieces that are in the kit in San Antonio are 10 inches by 14.5, which is these two added together. So if you look over here, we just cut an extra piece for you to get your extra 2 4.5 inch pieces out of. So not the end of the world, you're just going to have 2 pieces instead of 1. So I am going to go ahead and finish cutting this 8.5 inch square. And that way is 8.5. And what's fun is when you have an 8.5 inch square ruler, it makes it super easy. I'm going to make sure this is straight. I'm going to come down here and see. Yeah, now I can see better. And there, and I have my 1/2 inch lines there. And I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to reach over, and I'm going to do that.
This makes me nervous when you do that.
And we have an 8.5 inch square for the center. Okay. And now we need we need a total of 4 4.5 inch squares. So I am just going to stack these, and I'm going to clean cut an edge. Okay, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do the 4.5 here. Put them on top of each other, which had they been connected, I would have done the same thing. And come over here and line this up and then turn it over and cut 2 4.5-inch squares. It's funny when you realize something's not right. And I had caught the mistake. Unfortunately, I didn't change it on the cutting instructions for the kids. So, all right. So that is the entire block cut. We have 8.5 in our 4.5s. We have a total of 40 right now, 2.5-inch squares. And we have 8 4.5 by 8.5s. And then we have 4 4.5-inch squares and 4 4.5s by 8.5s. And there's your cut kit for the advanced month 2 block.